My name is Aaron Huber. I'm with the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney, and it's my privilege to be the first to welcome you all tonight, but certainly not the only one, because we have a number of esteemed panelists who are joining me tonight. I want to introduce them to you very briefly, and then they will have a chance to speak a little bit more about who they are and what their vision is for public safety in our community. Of course, we have our Commonwealth's Attorney, Gerina D. Councilman Jecorey Arthur. We have our Chief Operating Officer from Goodwill, Rena Sharpe. And the LMPD's Chief of Police, Humphrey. So we want to go ahead and start with Commonwealth's Attorney Gerina D. who, as mentioned, will tell a little bit more about herself and what we're trying to accomplish with our office.
Thanks, Aaron. I don't want to take too much time, but I want to thank everybody for being here, especially those that are here in front of you. And this is just an opportunity. We want to hear from you, but we do want to make sure that we introduce ourselves so you'll know who you're working with. I'm Gerina, and I've been here almost all my life. The military brought us here and was raised in the South End, and graduated from PRP, and from there I was in banking for several years, so I was a little bit older before I went to law school. But I came from a family of public servants, grew up in the 70s, was in DC quite a bit because my family did a lot of marching, did a lot of loving, taught me a lot, and I knew this is where I was supposed to be, not necessarily just being in law, but being a servant, and it takes all of us to do that. It's very important. It's one of those things that chooses us, we don't choose it. And I eventually worked at DC for just a small bit of time as an extern with one of the congressmen, and I was 18 years old, and it changed my life. Between that and working here in the community when it was not a merger. We weren't merged at the time, the city. And worked very heavily in the NAACP because my uncle was there in Baltimore. And then I eventually went to law school, worked as a law clerk for one of the circuit court judges for about 4 years. And then I went to prosecution for about almost 7 years, 7 or 8 years. And my arena was child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault cases. And then from there, I went to Frankfurt, and I was there for 10 years, created the Single Protection Division there at the Attorney General's office, went through 2 Attorney Generals, and also worked in the Special Victims Unit there, and then eventually went on to as a Personnel Cabinet Secretary. So that's a little bit of my life, but somehow I have gone full circle, and now I have been blessed to work with the best group of people that I've ever worked with, and that's our office, the Commonwealth's Attorney. And I want just to raise your hand for those who work with us, if you don't mind. This is some of our wonderful team, and I cannot do it without them. So there's about 100 of us in the office. There are 44 attorneys. We could not do it, though, without our victim advocates, our paralegals, and the other staff members that work with us tirelessly for the 782,000 people, and that would be part of you. And the big part is that I wanted to share with you that there's many people. I'm surprised that it's kind of nice to just share with you how it works, because you hear about Michael Connell. There's a county attorney's office and the Commonwealth's attorney's office. The county attorney's office deals with a lot of our misdemeanor cases, but all the child support cases and our juvenile cases. So there's juvenile court. And then you have the felonies that we deal with at the Commonwealth's attorney's office. We have to work hand in hand. Because many times, most of the time, a lot of those cases will come to us. And then in our office, it's broken down into 3 general trial divisions, and then we also have some special divisions. We got the Special Victims Unit, we have our Violent Crimes Unit, and that's going to be made up of our prosecutors that have worked there for a while and have decided to be in these special units for many reasons. And then we have, of course, the grand jury, and then we have our appellate group. And so I'm sharing that with you because that's what we're made up of. So what we have here and what we are here to do is that we're committed to help with the safety of the community. And it's very obvious that it's going to take more than just one agency. So we're lucky enough to work with other agencies. We have to, if we're really serious and committed about dealing with what's going on in our community. We want to help our children. We want our families to be safe. We want our elders to be able to go and come whenever they want to. And we want to make sure that we don't lose some of the children that we have, and we don't want our kids to go to school here and then leave and not stay in our community. So I am blessed to work with LMPD. I am one of those that I came from a military family. I believe in law and order, and I also believe in working together when we need to. And so that's a lot of times. So you'll hear from Chief. I don't want to take too much of your time, too much more time, but we do have some special units to deal with the gun violence that's going on. We also have a unit, our special unit that deals with a lot of the safety when it comes to the accidents that we're having, the fatalities that we're having. And the great thing about our office is that we can work with anybody. So we get to work with other community members, we get to work with law enforcement, which is most important on our level, the local level, but also on the federal and state level. So I don't want to spend too much more time, but I kind of want to just give you an overview, and I will share with you this. We are committed to do everything that we can to make sure that we can work together to figure out what we can do next. It's not going to happen overnight. You know that and I know that. But it is time for us to have this dialogue, to be able to talk. And I do want to say hello to Kimberly Moore, who's out there. She's another community-minded individual that we need in our community, and we work hand in hand. And I do want to congratulate our new chief. I believe in him. I believe that he can do this. He is a career police officer, and he's moved up the ranks, and he knows what he's doing. I can also say with Rena, I'm glad that she's here, and thank you for allowing us to be here in this setting, because we don't want to talk about just law enforcement. We also want to talk about services that may be provided for our community. So thank you very much. I also want to thank our councilman, Councilman Jecorey. I'm proud of you. We're going to miss you though. Again, we can collaborate and work together. We don't have to agree on everything, but one common goal is that we're trying to make this different. We're trying to make Jefferson County different. So thank you for being here with us. And without further ado, I'm going to have Councilman come up and say a few words.
I'm going to just hang out right here. It's been a long day. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to Metro Council District 4. Our district spans as far east, almost to Zorn Avenue, through Clifton Heights, Butchertown, downtown, Nulu, Phoenix City, Smoketown, California, a small piece of Portland, a small piece of Old Louisville, Russell, and then a part of the Parkland neighborhood where we are right now. I'm proudly born, raised, and still living in the west end of Louisville, which I think is the best end because it rhymes. And over the course of my life, I have been involved mostly professionally with young people. I'm a teacher. I've taught in Jefferson County Public Schools. I've also ran after-school programs at Boys and Girls Clubs, the Cabbage Patch Settlement House, community centers, libraries, parks, detention centers. I also teach at Simmons College of Kentucky, not only on campus, but also virtually and in prisons across Kentucky. Since joining Metro Council in 2021, I've approached public safety in a holistic way. Of course, at a certain point in the spectrum of violence, there are some people who have to come into contact with law enforcement and the courts, and I try my best to make sure that those people have options before they get to that point. But there are also other options when they do get to the courts. So something I just recently found out about that we have a connection on is we fund violence prevention programs through Louisville Metro government. My job is to pass laws, pass budgets, and some of those budgets go towards programs that are in our city trying to prevent violence or intervene in violence. And when someone goes into the court system, specifically juveniles, of course they could end up in jail or in prison. But there are also options where court designated workers, judges, can try to deter them into community services. And some of those services are paid for through Louisville Metro government with your tax dollars. So I've sponsored legislation to support some of those programs and pass those in our city budgets. And they get utilized through the court system. They get utilized in some cases with our law enforcement because, like I said, in some cases people do need to be taken away from society. But when they are in jail, when they are in that system, they still need access to programs. They still need care. They still need services. Because if not, I wouldn't be here today. because I was one of those kids that was running around in the streets when I was a teenager. So it's important that we work together across all branches of government, that we approach public safety in a holistic way. There's no one size fits all, and I'm just proud to be a part of this conversation, and I'm excited to hear from you all on what you think we could be doing better.
All right, so Chief Paul Humphrey, like the Commonwealth attorney said, born and raised in Louisville. Spent a lot of my career, I think about 8 years, I spent riding twos beat in the 1st Division. So the 1st Division is the division that's the north side of Broadway. The 2nd Division, run by Major Russ Miller here, is south of Broadway and everything west of here. So I spent a large portion of my career either on twos beat, which is the Russell neighborhood, or in Beecher Terrace. What I'll point out is that one of the main initiatives that we have is we have to get officers out here working. As Councilman Arthur said, there are multiple points in dealing with crime. If we can contact people before they get involved in the criminal justice system, that is absolutely what we want to do. So when you look at our crime plan, it is about proactivity and how we can make contacts with people. So when you look at the short-term plans that we have, it is about proactive policing. And proactive policing involves enforcement, but it also involves being visible to people and being where we can help them meet their needs. And then the third prong, the long-term prong, is about how we connect them with other city resources to change neighborhoods for the better. So we've identified the 5 historically most violent areas of the city. And now how do we, as the police, connect the neighborhoods to the resources that the city can provide? Because we're not going to clean up graffiti. We're not going to get the grass cut on an overgrown property. We're not going to board a house. But we're often the first contact between the citizen and the resource. And so how can we facilitate those resources for people? So I am a huge proponent of getting officers out and contacting people because I'm a firm believer that is a very effective method of driving down violent crime. And we've seen violent crime in our community at levels that we had never seen before in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's absolutely unacceptable. About 2/3 of our violent crime, or our homicides, happen in the 1st, 2nd, and 4th Division. So the 4th Division is just a little bit east of here, south of Broadway. So between 3 of our 8 divisions has approximately 66% of our homicides. So we know that violent crime is concentrated in certain areas, which means that we do need to give the appropriate resources and attention to those areas. The other thing that I hope you've seen is that I am absolutely dedicated to transparency in a different way. I think transparency is a word that we've thrown around historically, but nobody's ever really defined what it means. To me, transparency is not about information. It's about information with context, so you actually understand what's going on. And we get it right the vast majority of times. And I want to be able to tell you about when we get it right. And sometimes we get it wrong. And that's the way that it is. But you deserve to know when we get it wrong and what's going to be done about it. So I hope that you've seen that we've made efforts to try to make sure that you understand what LMPD is doing and why we're doing it.
Hi everyone, I'm Rena Sharpe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, and welcome to the West Louisville Opportunity Center. We're happy to have you all here in this space. This space has been used a lot since we opened at the end of March. I brought a couple of data points that I was going to share with you guys, but where you're sitting, and there's other spaces like this, there's been over almost 50,000 individuals use this space, and this was communicated to us from the community when we did our surveys early on when we were doing all the planning for this building, because we really wanted this building to be utilized. Most of you probably know a lot about Goodwill. I know everybody knows that we have thrift stores, but a lot of people don't realize that The stores are not, they're just a means to the end. So our budget this year, we are a statewide agency. We're governed by Kentucky State Board of Directors. Just got out of a committee meeting upstairs. Our board, we have a large group from Louisville, but we also have members on our board from all over the state. So our CEO reports to that board of directors, and they govern our budgets and all of our directives on mission and the things that we focus on. But if you knew Goodwill 8 or 10 years ago, you did not know the Goodwill of today. So we've gone, I started here 8 years ago, we have gone from a budget for what we put into our program services that's earned in our retail stores from your blouses donations. We appreciate that. If you bring us donations, we appreciate that because it is what allows us to do what we do. So we've gone from 8 years ago having a budget of just over $4 million of the revenue earned in the stores to today, this year our budget is almost $22 million. That's earned in the stores. That's revenue from the sales from those retail stores. We do get $4 or $5 million from additional funding. We're blessed to have some funding from the city that actually helped us to put this building together. We started this investment and commitment to West Louisville and the promise to West Louisville before COVID. So this building started out being about a $25 million building, and it turned into a $50 million building very quickly. And so our board of directors had a decision to make. Are we going to pause? Because we hadn't signed a contract with the builder, so we could definitely have put the brakes on and said, you know, we can't afford that. That's way too much money. That's not what we approved in the initial board meetings. But so many things and corporations have turned their back on West Louisville that our CEO and our board made a decision to not do that. So we stepped out on faith, and many of you all know Devon Holtz. He and our CEO hit the ground running, and they did a lot of fundraising. But Goodwill, our general fund, contributed almost $20 million to the building of this building. That money doesn't do us any good in the bank, and while we want to stay fiscally strong, we knew that this community needed this. But I think it's important for you to hear today and to tell your friends and neighbors from West Louisville. When I started here 8 years ago, our CEO, Amy Luttrell, said, we are moving to West Louisville. She made the statement. We started right away looking for a place to build in West Louisville. We were moving our corporate headquarters here, which my office is right upstairs, so I get to see all the activity and all the people being helped downstairs, which is pretty motivating for me. But that's the commitment that our CEO had, because we knew that we needed to be where access was easy for the resources. We also knew that we couldn't do it alone. So you've seen Big Brothers Big Sisters, the dental clinic, the career center, all the partners that we have here make it easier for individuals that already have it hard. Because if you just put Goodwill in a few words, it's really trying to make it easier for people that already have things really hard. And so our commitment and how we enter into this conversation is providing something else for people that have gone down the wrong path, wanting to get them back on track. If you don't offer them something different, that's not going to happen. We currently have been getting Department of Correction feedback on our programming. We do personal professional development based on a lot of it's reentry. A lot of it's just doing something different. If you've been in chronic poverty, you haven't worked in a long time, it's really hard to stay consistently working if you don't have your Maslow hierarchy of needs met. So if you're living under, the viaduct, if you're living on someone's couch in a different area all the time, for us to expect someone to really be self-sufficient without addressing those needs first, it's impossible. We've seen it because we used to be just about getting people jobs. That's what I say. If you know Goodwill from the past, we got people a job. It was a job for a day, job for a week, job for a month. We posted that we placed over 5,000 people into jobs. Where were they without supports a week later, 2 weeks later? We had employers upset with us because they didn't know where they were 2 weeks later, because you can't consistently work if you don't have your basic needs met. So we switched our model. We turned it totally upside down. That's why our budget's grown so much. So we have housing, we have 6 months free rent and utilities. As long as someone is trying to buy for themselves, they're putting in the work, we will give free housing. We really truly stay with the motto of a hand up, not a hand out, because we want people to not need us anymore. The goal is to help people become stable, get them into employment, career pathway. We say a job, a better job, and a career. That is the way that it happens. I want to share a little bit of recidivism data so that we now are getting third-party feedback on our programming. So of our graduates of our RISE program, which is what we teach in all of our opportunity centers, it's a 2 to 3 week personal and professional development program. Of the graduates from 2021, we had 3.4% recidivism 2 years later. So the state, their number is 27, just over 27% right now. So the 49 clients that avoided going back into the prison system, if you put that into real dollars, at 40,000 is the average per year in the state. You can see different numbers. We took like kind of a little bit of the medium road there. 40,000 a year to incarcerate someone, taxpayer dollars, that's a $2 million savings a year with our programming. So we believe it's a good investment. That's why we do it. We believe that investing in people makes all the sense in the world. And we have so many that come through our doors at our opportunity centers that really truly move up within Goodwill's system or out into other employment and do amazing things. So I think that we have to stop marginalizing individuals and help them even to see that they can do more and offer them options. And that's Goodwill's part in this. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Folks, you've had a chance to hear from our panelists, and now they want to hear from you. So if you've got a written question, I'll be glad to take that now. Does anyone have a written question ready for our panelists? Does anybody have a question for our panelists that would like to ask directly? Do you have a written question, sir? That you want
Yes.
to? Okay.
My question is, what are we doing? What are we doing when a first-time offender? This is for the prosecutor. What are we doing when a first-time offender is caught with a firearm in those type of situations? Because I run into a lot of young people that are not in gangs. They're carrying firearms because they're protecting themselves and they're scared. You know, so a lot of the peer pressure that comes from these young people is a lot of times they're not in gangs, but they're in gang-infested neighborhoods, and they're carrying guns to protect themselves from just being in that neighborhood. So if we identify with those type of things, it's illegal to have a gun, it's not registered, I understand that, but what are we doing to combat those people that are protecting themselves in the neighborhood or carrying a gun to protect themselves?
And all of our questions tonight are ones that any of our panelists can answer if they want. So if anyone else has any other thoughts on combating folks who are carrying guns for protection or first-time offenders or anything of that nature related to that, please feel free to answer.
I can share with you a couple things. I'll deal with the prosecution part first. It depends on what type of charge it is. You know, very seldom are when you get to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, there's something else that's happened. It's not just, it could be a first offender, but it also could be something that has seriously happened. It's a violent crime. But then you have, that's why there is a separation between us and then you've got juvenile court. And I'm sure that the chief can share that with you too. 30% of the violent crime is happening. 30% of the people in this city is committing these crimes. And then of those, there are a lot of them that are youth. And believe it or not, there is a well-oiled machine, whether we agree or disagree with it, where there is a program of services that are surrounded by our youth that goes through these certain programs in the juvenile court that we don't even get to see. And then we begin to try to separate. That's why we have a lot of the programs. So that's what you're looking at on that end. But as far as prosecution is concerned, I'll be very honest with you. We are working with LMPD and other agencies as it relates to gun violence. Now we've got different agencies and programs that are going to deal with it, like Rena, and of course you know Kimberly, and there are other programs and services that they are trying to not only intervene, but we have to work with them by statute, by ordinance. That is something that I've learned since I've been here with the city. So you've got the Juvenile Justice Commission, Juvenile Crime Commission that's overall in metro government, and then there's like 22 subcommittees that includes the community that come in with these certain programs. Jail Policy Committee, we've got a Juvenile Justice Committee. So we are working as much as we can in the community to try to stop or divorce them from being in our court. By the time they get to our court, now you're dealing with the adults. So you may have some first-time offenders, And we understand that. That's why, and I'll be honest with you, there's a policy in our office until something happens differently, that we have to give the prosecutors the autonomy to be able to kind of work through these cases and to see on a case-by-case basis what we need to deal with. And we've got some great people, great attorneys that are trying to work through that. But the other part of that is, to be honest, it is a serious issue that we're dealing with our community. We got to figure something out. So we still have to do our job when it comes to prosecution. And we are doing everything we can on the community side. But by the time they get to us, it is our responsibility to kind of sift through it to see what we're dealing with. And a lot of times with these guns, we got to get them off the street. We got to get the guns off the streets, but we got to get the people who are using the guns off the streets. So I hope that helps a little bit. But then we've got the Group Violence Intervention Program, that's GVI. It's called different things in different states, but here, that's something that happened that came along in 2020, where we work with LMPD officers, we deal with law enforcement on the federal level, we deal with the AG's office, and we come together and we start looking at some of these cases as far as prevention is concerned. That's what Kimberly does. We've got another officer, I'll let Chief talk about that, but then we've got people who are working specifically in the community when we know that that's the issue, that they have not yet really actually in the system yet, but we know what's going on with them, with gun possessions and things like that. So we're trying to work with them as much as we possibly can. This has become a lot easier than I thought that it would be when we're dealing with prosecution and wanting to work with the community. We just got to do both. But it is twofold. We have got to figure out how to deal with the gun violence that's happening. And I know that we will not be in agreement with some of these things, but we also need legislation to deal with some of this, to deal with this. And I understand with the state and we will do what we're supposed to do in our jobs, but it makes our jobs a lot harder when we're just open carry. And I'm the one that believes in it. I carry, but our kids shouldn't be carrying. People who have that needs mental health treatment shouldn't be carrying. And so all of that is mixing into that pot, if you will, and we're trying to extrapolate and figure out what to do with it. So we're doing the best that we can when we come to those programs.
I just want to add real quick, gangs are a function of a lack of programs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the lack of programs is because of a lack of awareness. When I was younger, I was running around the streets carrying guns, and I was in a gang because I didn't understand what programs we had offered. If you go to LouisvilleKY.gov, go to our government department list, the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods has a Youth Engagement Services Division. And earlier this year, we had them create a youth service directory. There are hundreds of programs for young people in this city. I hear so often, ain't nothing for our kids to do, and that's a lie. Me and my kids go to the library programs, the community center programs, and there's a whole bunch of nonprofits doing a lot of work for our young people. They need volunteers. They need more young people to engage with them. They need more awareness. They need donations. So if you got a little cousin, if you got a neighbor, if you know a young person who for some reason found themselves finding solace within a gang, encourage them to join that arts program at the community center. Encourage them to go to the library and join that coding program where they are literally learning engineering techniques that could get them a high-paying job in the future. There are plenty of alternatives to joining a gang. We just don't always know about those alternatives. But that youth services directory is really key. You can always point people to that. And if you offer youth services, you can apply to be a part of it. Some of them are low cost, some of them are no cost. But we have no excuse if we're sharing that information with each other.
Chief, would you like to speak to what are we doing when a first-time offender is caught with a firearm?
So first of all, I'd like to agree with Councilman Arthur. This country is not lacking for opportunity, but it is lacking for access to opportunity or an awareness that those opportunities are available. And so the more we can do to open people's eyes to the opportunities they have available to them, they will realize how many people actually will work their butts off to make them successful. But I'll say a couple of things about kids with guns. First of all, we're talking about how do we change neighborhoods so that those kids don't feel like they have to carry a gun. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. And obviously that's not a lot of police work, but that is what I was talking about as far as how do we change these neighborhoods that are habitually plagued by violent crime, and how do we connect people to resources. The other thing is that this is a constitutional carry state, so just like you talked about having an unregistered gun, that doesn't exist here. Anybody over 21 can carry concealed, they can carry open, they can do whatever they want with a gun. So as we have very, very loose gun laws here. So odds are if a person is in her court with a gun, it's because they did something else with it that got us got them caught up. Because just carrying a gun is not illegal in Kentucky anymore. Now, obviously, you're talking about young people, so under 18. I don't think there's anybody in here that would advocate for that being an okay thing. So when it comes to the group violence intervention stuff, that is a big part of where we are trying to take people that are young people that are part of these groups. Kim, what's the number, the percentage of our call-ins that are on juveniles? It's like 60-something%. Yeah, so over 60, almost 70% of the people that we're contacting through GVI in these groups are young people. And that is the entire point, is to say to them, look, we know who you are, we know the people around you, we know what y'all are up to. We are going to show you all of these options to get out of that lifestyle, all the way up to and including working on relocation, right? But if you don't want to get out of that lifestyle, we have something else for you, and we'll make sure that you're housed in our system until you age out of that lifestyle. So we try to give young people the choices for where they're going to go and show them some options.
Just a comment.
So some of you, I mean, obviously everybody remembers the bank shooting. So the same day of the bank shooting, it wasn't in the news covered very, very much, but at our young adult campus, which was at JCTC's campus at the time, called The Spot, Kim partners with us a lot on that. We had one of our students, 2 of our students were shot in the front door as they were on break from their classes there at The Spot, and one of them was killed. And so because of that, we started actually wanding students as they came into the classrooms. We put that in place shortly after that. We thought that our attendance would go down. We serve hundreds of kids. We're getting ready to have a graduation soon in this building, and we'll graduate almost 300 students that have graduated from that young adult program. And interestingly enough, our attendance went up. So the ones that weren't coming because they didn't feel safe, because they knew that there were students carrying guns, felt safer to come because we were checking at the door. So we've been able to actually serve more students in that program, which is 16 to 24-year-olds disconnected youth, and have had a lot of success. But that was a surprise to us, and I just wanted to share that with you, that the attendance went up. Yes?
I know you mentioned the attendance went up with older, you said 16 to 24, but seeing the metal detector in elementary school, middle school, those younger ages, I feel like the kids from what I'm hearing, is that they're feeling over-policed. In a way, yes, you're assuming safety, but then it's like, that's a different, when I was in elementary school, I did not have a metal detector. I know times are different, but I know a lot of the kids are the same.
So I'm not sure about the elementary schools, but I know at least at this campus, I think it has made everyone feel safer. We haven't had really, to be honest, negative feedback that I know of. Chris?
Well, I'm a recruiting specialist for the Spot Young Adult Opportunity Center, and I just think, I agree with Rena, I just think young people, if they can feel safe and they can take advantage of the opportunity, because what we are seeing is a lot of people are confronted with issues that we don't know nothing about. Some of these young people, like I was saying, that, a lot of people don't know this, but my son was murdered on Greenwood Avenue, Todd Brown, and I raised him up right and different types of things. But when he would tell me the things, he said, Daddy, we almost gotta have a gun just to go to the barber shop. So a lot of these kids are faced with issues on the demographic of young people that we deal with, 16 to 24, that we wouldn't even imagine. And this don't have to be the kid that's the gangbanger. This is a normal kid getting off the school bus. All of us heard of what happened over on 22nd Street when the young kid was killed on the bus stop of Eastern High School. So, you know, this was just a random type of thing. And I don't know the details, but they said it was a random type of thing. So I think the fact that they can come through a metal detector when they come to our orientation and enrollment, which is on Monday, every Monday at 11 a.m., they just feel safer. And even if they go out on smoke break, they got to come back through the metal detector. So I just think it gives them a secure feeling and a safe environment. And they're not getting that when they walk out our doors. They're walking into situations and into neighborhoods where they could get killed. So a lot of them get real sad when we close on the holidays because it's their safe haven and it's their safe environment.
Thank you. Do we have any more written questions I can collect at this time? We'll get to any additional questions at the end. Any other written questions? Excellent. Our next question for the panelists is, how are we building a coalition across all sectors by partnering with employers, helping them to understand they're also part of the solution of decreasing recidivism? So partnership with employers. Anyone want to tackle that first?
I can take that one. So you would think that would be easy, but a lot of employers say their second chance.
That's right.
And that means traffic tickets. And we found that out the hard way the last few years since we've really been ramping up our training and development programs. We do have some employers that are truly second chance that don't do background checks anymore. We also have partnered with UPS and General Electric, and this has been over the last year. They had very restrictive hiring practices. UPS, obviously, Worldport, they can't hire anyone with backgrounds in that particular area because of their regulations with Worldport. But they do have quite a lot of warehouses, and they pay $22 an hour, which is a good starting wage with good benefits. So what we've done, we have about 1,000. I guess I'm finished. Maybe 5. So we have about 1,000 entry-level jobs at Goodwill in Louisville. We have about 1,900 statewide. So we use those jobs as really just to get stability for individuals and give them a place to start. And we give a lot of wraparound services when they work for us. So we went and approached several employers, but I'm going to mention UPS and GE because you all know them, and said we looked at each other's hiring matrices. And Goodwill hires everyone. So we have a training facilitator at one of our young adult campuses who spent 30 years in prison. So we truly do give second chances, and we allow people to move up in our career coaches and other positions that have lived experience, and it works quite well. But what we did with those employers is GE will hire them if they've worked at Goodwill for 90 days and they have had good standing with Goodwill, and we can give them a recommendation. They will hire them, whereas they would have not normally have hired them. So we're kind of starting, UPS is doing the same thing. So they're a little scared to hire them directly in many cases, especially depending on their offenses. But if they've worked at Goodwill, we call it LEAP. We actually have a program called LEAP to where they work for us, and we intentionally want them to leave us because you're not going to get out of poverty making $13 an hour at Goodwill, and we recognize that. So that when they leave us, that creates an opportunity for someone else to come in from one of our opportunity centers to be able to fill that job until we can get them an opportunity to leap out into another employer. So we are working on it. It's hard because employers are scared of the liability and the risk. There's some funding that came through that is coverage, like if somebody steals your equipment from your plant, then you can recover some of the money if you hire second chance. Bonds, I'm not opposed to that, but at the end of the day, that's not really moved the needle on the employers that we're trying to get to hire a lot of the individuals who are returning into society. And at the end of the day, if you don't provide, again, something different for them, they're returning. They're coming out into our communities, and that's why Goodwill does what we do as far as investing. We did just finish our budget, and we hired a full-time director for Louisville that their only role is to develop employer partners that will hire our clients graduating from our programs and our employees who we want to graduate out of Goodwill into a better career pathway and self-sustainability.
No, you go ahead. I do want Kimberly Moore, because she's kind of a conduit of all of us, to be able to say a few words about and answer some of these questions, respond to questions after Chief.
Yeah, I just wanted to give jump back a question real quick to give some numbers context to the question you asked about youth and carrying guns. So just to give you some perspective, 109 of our homicides involved handguns. 20 of our suspects in homicides are under 24, understanding that we don't have suspects in a lot of them. 50 of our homicide victims are under 24. When you look at the numbers nationally, for males who die between the ages of 20 and 24, for white males who die between the ages of 20 and 24, 4% of those are killed by homicides. For black males, the same age group, 46% are murdered. For white males between 15 and 19, 5% die by homicide. For black males between 15 and 19, 54% of black men between 15 and 19 who die are murdered. So that kind of puts some context on the health crisis that homicide is, particularly gun deaths in this country.
And Kimberly Moore, you are a volunteer with Goodwill, is that correct? I know you do a lot in the community. I'm trying to introduce you the best way, but I suppose the best way is to let you do it yourself.
I'm not a volunteer at Goodwill. I'm a consultant at Goodwill, and so one of the things when Rena we started talking about winding, she was dead set against it. She was like, no, numbers are going to go down. And I was like, no, people are going to come where they feel safe. And so I just wanted to say, when you were talking about over-policing, I've been on the ground in Louisville for 22 years. Louisville's more violent than it's ever been. And you look around this room, and I just said this to somebody out in the hallway, the whole community should be here having a voice. And so I'm disappointed that we're in the heart of one of the most violent and impoverished areas in the city of Louisville, and the community is not represented a lot, because I'm looking around everybody who works. So if you take all the people from the Commonwealth attorney's office, the police office, and everything, I think we're going to have like 12 people, because I counted. And so you got to think about that. Do you want to be part of the solution, or do you want to be part of the problem? Are you going to complain about it, or are you going to work with us to do better? And so that's what I'm saying to people in the community. So they said this wasn't advertised. I said, yes, it was. I have over 5,000 friends. It was on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. And people still said, I'm just not coming. And so I'm one of the people that do customs with LMPD, which is where we go to gang members' house to give them a message saying, if you come out of the streets, we're more than willing to help you relocate. The problem I run into is the young man might want to leave. The mom needs him there to continue to sell drugs and continue to do the things that she needs him to do. And you might not think that happens, but that really happens. Where women want to fight me and argue, and we relocate. I'll say this and be quiet. We relocated somebody to Bowling Green. He was doing really well in Bowling Green, and his grandmother called me up and said he's got to come back because he sells dope and he takes care of the whole family, and we can't do without him. And he had been shot 4 different times when I relocated him. So he came back and got shot again. And the good news is yesterday SWAT got him. And we had been looking for him for months. He's very dangerous. And so they called me and said SWAT got the house surrounded. And I just said, tell him to come out, because if he comes out with a gun, they're probably going to kill him. And so he's in custody now. Family crime foul. Everybody's mad. Long story short, 7 people in his family under 18 have been shot. 2 of them have been killed. 2 uncles have been killed. And then you get this kid yesterday, and this kid gets locked up, and he's got 6 kids. 6 kids. So you got to think about the generations. And so I always say, if you're a lawyer, you might be a 2nd-generation lawyer, you might be a 3rd-generation lawyer. I got 3 generations of people selling drugs and carrying guns. And until somebody steps out of the light and show them something different, they're not going to do anything different. So we have to have jobs. And I can't ask little Johnny to stop selling drugs for $15 an hour. He's not going to do it. He's making $2,000 a week. You got to give him some jobs. We got to do some stuff. So don't ever give me a microphone talking about violence in Louisville and expect me not to do what I'm doing.
I think we have time for one more question. I know we started a little late. We have one here. Thank you. What have we done to address homelessness and access to affordable housing in West Louisville?
So my first year in office in 2021, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, COVID-19 relief funds. And after putting some of my homies and my colleagues in a headlock politically and wrestling with them and struggling with them, we were able to take majority of those funds and put it towards renovating shelter, creating a safe outdoor space, rental assistance, home repair, down payment assistance for people who wanted to be homeowners, and a whole lot of affordable housing. Now, most of that has not been built yet, and when it is, it's going to help house hundreds of families. But it's important to point that out because so many major American cities got American Rescue Plan funds, and on average, according to Brookings, they spent about 10% on homelessness and affordable housing. Louisville spent triple that amount, about a third of our money on that issue. But it's never something that we just spend money on one time and then it's all said and done. Every single year, your city budget can help address that issue by putting money towards affordable housing. Just today, in committee, Planning and Zoning Committee, we passed a tool that is the first of its kind in the nation that assesses development for displacement, which means when you want subsidies from the city, you want land, money, resources from Louisville Metro government, your development, your housing development must be affordable. That's kind of crazy to say out loud. Your government was spending money on housing that people could not afford.
That's right.
Until just this year. So what are we doing about homelessness? We're making sure people can afford their housing, and if they don't have housing, we're building more housing. And that's not just in the West End, because the West End has a concentration of affordable housing. That's for everywhere in this city, and it should be everywhere in this city. Otherwise, we'll have modern day redlining, and we're trying to reverse that.
I can just share with you that that's another part of our community. I'm not going to say that we're the expert of that at all, but I will share with you that we're working with communities that are doing some really great things. Well, not just the Homeless Coalition, but you've got Project Rebound, you've got Urban League, you've got federal funding that's going through these organizations that are doing and working with some of the churches and being able to have that type of funding when you're talking about homelessness, and it isn't to just be concentrated in one area. It is becoming now, prayerfully that will stay that way, is that affordable housing means that it's going to be all over the city, which means that when people are housed, people have money and food on the table, we're prayerfully that we're hoping that we can just be there to do whatever we can do, which means that it could be that helping, we just did not too long ago, helping other organizations become official programs through the court system. That means that if they get in this, if these programs or if these 501c03s can be vetted, they can be part of the system. So when if someone comes in and we're having those issues, then the judge can actually refer them to those programs. And we're just trying to, we have learned that we're going to stay in our lane and do what we can. But I am going to these programs and getting to know a lot of great people in the community, and they're doing the best that they possibly can. And we will do. You never know. There are stories that, and we could talk all night. That if we work together and make sure that we can do as much as we can, that's what we're going to do.
Can I actually ask you a question? And I know we're running up on time, but you brought up the issue of over-policing and the feeling of over-policing, and I 100% understand the feeling, but what does it look like? So I think that's one of the terms that we throw around, but nobody's agreed on a definition of what it is. We kind of know it when we feel it, I guess. So what does it look like, and how do we effectively prevent violent crime, arrest people who have committed crimes, and not give that feeling in certain communities? How do we do that? And I know we're up on time, so I'm willing to stay and talk to you afterwards too.
Well, as far as my question is more in reference to elementary, middle school, and high schools. I mean, I know I went to middle school 10 years ago. I mean, I would prefer that for an actual student, an actual student to like that's currently in JCPS, seeing those get implemented in their schools, how it has made them feel. I mean, I would like to see at the table for the kids in JCPS that are, dealing with things in JCPS. So I can see it as a case manager, but to actually speak for them, I don't want to speak for them. But I have heard some of my clients saying that. And I mean, I think I watched one get put into the middle school, one of my middle schools that I went into, and it was kind of hard to see because I know that that was not a thing when I went to middle school, so.
Can I answer that real quick? I want to ask that, give y'all some homework. I'm a teacher. So the concept of over-policing, I think it's a misnomer because it doesn't just mean there's a presence of police that are around too much. You talk about metal detectors. People can feel unsafe with that. Of course, people can also feel more safe with that. Whether it's metal detectors or you walking across the street somewhere and you hear that blue light that says, "Hey, you're being recorded right now. Get out of this area." Those are scary. And you don't even have to have a police officer in the area just to feel like, the Terminator's behind your back. It just almost feels like we can't even exist in our own community sometimes and feel safe and not feel like we're going to get in trouble. So I think that mindset and that ideology has just been kind of indoctrinated in us over time, whether or not police are there. I'll also say this though, community has a role in public safety that I do not think that community has stepped up and played. You should not have to solely rely on a police officer for your community to feel safe. Because if a police officer shows up to ask what happened and you don't know your neighbor's name, and you ain't never talked with them and dealt with them, and you can't tell, you just describe somebody randomly and you have no idea who the people in your community actually are, it makes their job a lot harder. And if they can't follow up and be detectives and do the investigative work to actually solve cases, then it just gets perpetuated and people retaliate. But I wanted to give y'all some homework real quick because we talked about guns, and I'm sure y'all have heard the phrase, guns don't kill people, people kill people. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. People do kill people, but if you look at the data, guns are overwhelmingly killing people. Was it over 90% of the homicides are done with some sort of firearm? So I want to point out, you might have heard of Everytown. Everytown has a research website, everytownresearch.org, and it ranks every state in the country on how strong your gun laws are.
Every town?
And every town, which is kind of crazy because it's about every state, but it's called Everytown. Everytownresearch.org. It ranks every state based on gun safety laws and then your crime rates or your rates of gun deaths. Kentucky is a national failure.
Yes.
According to the website. 93%. It's a national failure. So 93% of the homicides are done with guns. So we absolutely have a gun problem. And the gun safety laws aren't about punishing people more who have access to guns. It's about making it harder to get guns in the first place. There are plenty of common sense gun laws that Kentucky does not have. So if you ever get bored or you see a news story and it makes you so upset about violence in our community, go to the state website and contact your legislator, contact your representative, contact your senator, send them that website, send them that data. The data you just heard was exactly right. There's even worse data on here that will bring you to tears about violence within our community. And not just Louisville, in the state at large. There are people in rural Kentucky who are killing themselves at higher rates than people are killing each other in the urban parts of the state. So take the information that you get and actually do something with it. It's never enough to just talk about ending violence. We have to be movers and shakers. I know the election got a lot of people in their feelings. How are you challenging that energy into being a productive citizen so that we can help the next person in our city? That's all I have to say.
And just really quick, I just wanted you all to know that every town donated money to Kentucky. They donated money to Louisville to do some gun violence work. I was just with them in Seattle, and they're really concerned about the loss of life in the state of Kentucky. They really are looking at some different things. So they got millions of dollars. The founder is very generous, and they're going to invest a lot of money in the state of Kentucky.
I just have
Great website.
Chief, if you had anything about the leasing again.
So I know that we're out of time, but I just wanted to go back to affordable housing. So over the last year, Goodwill has really attempted to learn and understand where the funding is for affordable housing, because we spend about $2 million a year to house about 100 people here in Louisville in our housing, and that's 6 months free rent and utilities. They have to be working, they have to be saving. If they meet their savings goals when they graduate our housing in 6 months, we give them $1,000 to go with their savings. The average person has about $5,000 to $6,000 in the bank when they graduate our housing, and we have almost 65% success in getting them into unsubsidized housing. However, we can't find places for them to go. So we're graduating them, and we want to find them nice places to live, because our housing is pretty nice. We want them to have dignity in that. So as we've learned about affordable housing And the way that most of it works, I would not consider it to be affordable. And I'll say that because only a small percent of many of the developments have to be down in the $1,200 to $1,400 range. Many of them are $1,800 to $2,200, and those are some of the ones that are being built right now. So I think it's 10%. So if there's 100 units, 10 of them is going to be what we would consider for our clients that are graduating our program affordable. The other thing that you might Google and look up is called tenant selection list. So most of these developments have a tenant selection plan. The tenant selection plan eliminates almost everyone that Goodwill works with that has any kind of a barrier in their background on their record. They go to the bottom of the list. So when you have a shortage, which we have a huge shortage, thousands and thousands of affordable units here. So what happens is the people who really are coming out and really need that housing and trying to get their life back on track are put at the bottom of the list, and they are not going to get to them on the tenant selection because obviously, I don't mind that people invest and they want to get their investment back, and a lot of these have a lot of investors and they're looking for it to make a return, and I understand that. We are trying to do affordable housing on this property. We've got an application in right now that we're hoping wins the award, but it is our tenant selection list that we proposed is favoring people with backgrounds, and it's favoring people that are trying to get back on their feet, and the rents won't be any higher than $1,200 a month. And we're donating, if we get selected, we're going to donate some property right back here on the campus to be able to build 75 units, but we had to do a lot of work to make that happen. We may not get selected because of the way that we put it together, but if any of you have any place to advocate, I would like for you to say what is affordable, because there's a different definition.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
No, go ahead. I just want to make sure.
No, you're good.
Stay on. Go ahead and finish your statement.
Chief, did you have anything else about that? Okay.
A one-bedroom in West Louisville for $1,100 a month is not affordable for the people of West Louisville. And so we looked at a three-bedroom and it was $1,550. How many people who live in West Louisville can afford $1,550? So let's just talk about how developers are getting money to come into our neighborhood to build houses that are not affordable. And I'll say this to be quiet, you have to look at the gentrification that happened under Fisher when you start moving boys out of Beachy Terrace to the East End, where they was moving into areas where they were beefing at it. That was the only place their parents could get jobs. And so you end up moving these kids into these areas and they end up getting killed. So we've lost a lot of life on the back of gentrification in West Louisville.
Well, I want to thank everybody for a great and lively community conversation. We covered a lot of topics tonight. Unfortunately, we don't have time to cover every topic. So if you do still have some additional questions, we've been trying to make sure that everybody gets as many questions in uniquely as possible. But if you do have any additional questions, if they have time, if they have availability, our panelists may be able to stay for a few extra minutes and address those questions one-on-one. But again, we want to be respectful of everybody's time, so I'll go ahead and pass the microphone off to our panelists for their closing remarks, and we'll wrap things up. Just a reminder, we have literature, we have giveaways over on our table over there. Take a look as you're heading out the door, and thank you all for joining us.
We're here for you. We're continuously supposed to be. We are working for you. That's what servants are about. And I want to personally thank this beautiful office of mine that showed up, that are here, they're working tirelessly every day. And I talk with them individually. We've got some good people that are out here that are going to do the right thing. And I was remiss to also talk about, we've got a whole group of investigators that take care of us and do other things in fugitive cases, so we thank you too. So it will be available. I'm here, we'll answer any questions that you have. Just remember, we've got over 770 cases that are just involving guns alone. We've got 4,000 cases total in our office. So we're working through it, sifting through it. The only way we can do this is that we have to do this together. It's no longer finger pointing. It's no longer saying it's one agency over another. But we have to have our community involved too. And thank you for coming.
You heard it all. I ain't got nothing to add. Thank y'all for being here, but also thank you for the work you do outside of this room, whether you do police work, whether you work with a nonprofit. Volunteer. Thank you all so much, and I hope we can work together more often.
I think I've taken my time, but thank you all so much. And if you already support Goodwill, we appreciate you. If you don't, please bring us your blouses.
Thank you all for being here, and I'll stick around for a couple extra minutes. One of the things I'm interested in is how do we get more people to these? we enjoy talking about the work that we do and hearing feedback on how to do it better. So how do we get more people to show up and express their voice and keeping their community safe?
I think you have to talk to the media, you have to talk to the media, and you have to talk to.
I have to talk to the media more.
So we did have WFY, they came and previewed this. Unfortunately, there was something going on at Clifton. You
They
all might have
called
heard about.
they called me at 7:30 this morning, and I called her the day up.
So we, they were gonna come, but obviously breaking news is breaking news. So, but thank you all again. Stick around. Our folks, if they can stick around, will as well. And I really appreciate you all coming out tonight.